The journey to week 1 of the NFL season continues. The Chiefs made some moves. They have a practice squad, at least the majority of it. We're going to go through in detail and what could be next coming up today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends, folks around the world, Chiefs Kingdom. We have a lot for you. The Chiefs have a practice squad, or the vast majority of it. We're going to get into that. What could be coming around the bend, as we heard a little bit about Blake Bell today as well. A couple of moves yet to come. There's a lot to cover. We're going to go into it, but thanks for making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next listen. We are part of the network that is Locked On, your team every day for free. We will get to that. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, and RGR Football.
Just a couple of different places, right?
Yeah.
I am Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. You can find me over there. Going to be talking a lot about this roster and getting ready for the first regular season game in a little over a week at this point.
I'm ready. I just want to say.
Yeah, I know, right?
Roster moves aside. It was kind of an interesting cut down. We laid that out with Matt Derrick yesterday. If you guys missed that, our reaction was to the moves. We're waiting to see who returned, and now we've got a lot of those answers. I want to go through a few of them just as we go, because I think there's some key inferences that we can make from this. First and foremost, Reese Fountain returning to this roster on the practice squad for right now. I do think that is a future move that we're going to see him pulled up to the 53 because of his special team skill. It was pretty much hinted at that by a couple of the beat reporters today. Do you see that happening, or is this just they wanted to stash him and he was willing to come?
So are you meaning that, I guess I didn't see what you saw the beat reporters say. Were they saying that they think he's going to be on the 53, or that he's just going to be a call-up during the week?
That he will at least be a call-up, and that eventually a move could be made.
Yeah, okay. I can see it both ways. It would not shock me if they used him as a call-up for the first couple of weeks and then bring him up as an active roster participant from there forward.
Okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think it's going to be about, is Dave Toub stomping on the table that week or not, that he's got to have somebody else. I think a lot is going to ride on how well the Gunners that are on this roster perform. Particularly, I think Justin Watson, we're going to see him do some of that. I'll be really interested to see what the special teams practices look like here in the next couple of days, to see like how they're just lining up, because Jerice was such a piece of that in training camp and all through this process.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy looking at this roster, seeing all the different players that they have from different positions. I think we did pretty decent on our roster projections, because I still don't I was surprised they kept 3 QBs a little bit. I mean, I'm not shocked, but I was a little surprised. And I really didn't think Ronald Jones was going to stick. So obviously they think that he can provide something this year for him, and that's fine. But there's a lot of offensive tackles in this roster too.
Yeah, we might have done okay. This is my worst year in, I think, 4 or 5 years. I only got 47 players right. It's pretty terrible. But you know what? We all learn. We all live. When you're inside the building, some of those decisions that come down, not just to a position, but who's 51 on the entire roster. That's really, I think, what got them.
The bigger thing that really is a shocker to me, biggest shocker to me, and I didn't get to talk about this yesterday, Elijah Lee. I just absolutely
backed on the practice squad today, folks.
Right.
So
I'm still just floored with it, though.
Right. Yeah. Going forward with the initial, now they have that piece that, again, you can do a weekly call up, or as this churn begins, we'll talk about upcoming moves here later in the show. But that is the guy that is at your fingertips at this point. I can't see him staying on the practice squad for very long. I think they're going to have to elevate him rather quickly. Am I wrong?
I would have thought that he would have been one of those guys that would be brought up, and Blake Bell would have been sent to IR. So really,
I think that's still to come.
Yeah, could be.
So they have a few days, I think, before they just in terms of like week 1 roundup, I think they'd have some time to do that. So that's one of the moves. I think Bell will go. Will it be Elijah? Will it be Jerice Fountain? Those are the 2 most likely candidates in my mind to immediately come back up to the roster. Whether permanently or weekly, I'm not sure how that will work, because there isn't anything that says they have to carry a 53-man roster in a given week.
Right. And the other side of it, though, is also I thought that they would keep 4 DTs or maybe 5 DTs, I guess is what we really talked about. But they only kept 4, and they have 2 on the practice squad. That's a little surprising to me.
2 guys with significant experience on the practice squad at defensive tackle. And I think, that lets Shelton get into shape like we talked about with Matt yesterday. It also lets Stallworth, and Stallworth's an interesting case because his agent's been very vocal about this process, saying that, yes, we're going to go back to the practice squad, but we expect him to be with a 53-man roster very soon. I don't know if that's trying to push the Chiefs in a direction or trying to threaten that, hey, we're going to get somebody to sign us off of this practice squad real quick. But either way, I feel that that's where he belongs. I don't feel he's stuck out in over pursuing anybody that's on the roster right now. So that seems like a lot of bluster to me.
No, and I agree with that. I think that he does not belong on the 53. The top 4 are obviously the top 4, and if you can only keep 4, if you are only going to keep 4 of them, you got the right 4. Stallworth is a guy that, to me, doesn't really push the needle that much beyond what they already have. So, yeah, could he provide depth if somebody gets injured? Sure. But Shelton is a guy that I think actually gives them something that they don't already have on the roster, at least to an extent. I mean, Nadi is great, but he's not Shelton when it comes to plugging a hole.
Yeah,
or
that's very true. And that's proven out by the stat line from last year. If you look at Stallworth, he had some numbers. And that brings me to, sometimes you need all those stats in order to make your evaluations or understand the game in a better light. Our new friends, Elias, they are going to help you with that. Our newest sponsor, it's that time of year. The NFL is about to start, and we highly, highly recommend the Elias Game Plan app because it gives you all that information, not just for the NFL, some other sports too. I don't care to speak about those right now because it's football season. But the Elias Sports Bureau, you've heard of them before, the official statisticians of the U.S. sports, including the NFL. They have an app. You want to check it out to get all of your information, player news, league-validated player stats, the real ones, the ones that go in the record books are there. All the new features for player injury analysis available at all the time in this app from this bureau that you want to get because it is the NFL season. And I'm just calling it week 1 right now. I'm just happy. So don't wait. Download the Elias Game Plan app today. And right now we have a special offer for when you subscribe. You get a 14 free-day trial off of a monthly subscription plan, but only if you use the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL. From the Elias Sports Game Betting app in the App Store or the Play Store today and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Couple of other standouts on this practice squad roster because, again, I think there's call-up potential here. Do you have one or do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
For me, I'm very keen to see what Azure Kamara does because I thought he outplayed Kano in the preseason myself. So I don't know if that's hedging a bet, but we'll see what happens to that. And I know why you're laughing because any chance I can get to say a Jayhawk should be in the league, that's what I'm here for. But
that's exactly what I think is going on. But it's fine. I get it. You have your alma mater and you're proud of it. Whatever. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that Kano showed a little bit, but Kamara is a guy that if they're going to have somebody on the practice squad, it makes sense to have a defensive end on the practice squad. I'm still shocked that they kept 6 defensive ends. I did not expect that to happen. So a lot of questions as to how that's going to play out. And one of the things that we haven't talked about that I think we should, it's not official yet, but it does sound like Kendall Blanton is going to be joining the practice squad for the Chiefs as well, which you, I think, kind of hinted at, right?
Yeah, I was just going to get to that too, because like with Bushman, who we think because of the situation and the timing, he's likely lost for the year because of what you have to do to get him on and off the roster, that kind of thing. There could be a settlement later that could twist that. We'll see. But you lost him, and now with Blake going to IR, you're thin at tight end all of a sudden. If you have an injury to the top 3, you're in trouble, right? So they brought back Jordan Franks, and they supposedly are bringing in Blanton. Now, I didn't see a claim there. So I'm not sure if there's a delay, right? So he hit the wire, passed the wire. Now they say they're bringing it in. I haven't seen confirmation of that, but we know they put in a claim for him earlier this year, and so it makes sense. I think he and Franks give them a 1-2 punch on the practice squad that allows you to elevate a tight end with different skill sets at a given time if you need it.
I wonder if it makes Franks expendable. I get what you're saying, but 2 tight ends and 2 DTs. I mean, you're sitting there.
Not your
That's a
typical.
lot. I mean, that's what 25% of your practice squad with 2 positions, and a lot of other players that you need for different other positions. So maybe Cornell Powell made it back as another wide receiver. So they have 2 wide receivers in the practice squad as well. You're sitting there looking at several positions that have a lot of depth. Caliendo was another guy I liked, and he's back on the practice squad, as is Austin Ryder. So you have quite a few offensive linemen too.
You do, and I'm fine with Ryder as the practice squad guy because he's got Super Bowl experience. You know, much like Matt Moore, he's the aged veteran that if everything fell apart and you need an interior lineman, you can probably bring him in. And it shouldn't be a huge jump. Did I think he deserved this 53-man roster? No. But I think it's an easy way at what? I think the veterans get, what, $16K a week, something like that? It's a cheap alternative. What is it, 19? Okay.
It could be. They have a little bit of a window.
Yeah. So it gives you an easy way to protect yourself against injury on the interior.
Right. And I think that's smart. I'm really surprised you have, 10 offensive linemen on the 53-man roster, and now you have several more on the practice squad. So obviously you're keeping your offensive lineman, and I get it. I mean, it's an important position in the NFL, so something to watch there. They also brought in a QB, which we haven't talked about, which still fascinates me because they have 3 on the roster.
We'll definitely get to that and coming transactions here in the next segment, but just want to reiterate the other thing that really stands out to me about what they did. Jerry Ely is back here. He was UDFA, but Najee Johnson is back on the practice squad. So the entirety of their draft class is with the team in some way or form. And if they have an injury, especially if they need to move Legarius back outside and they need some nickel support, I think Najee can come in and do that. And I think it's great that they got their entire class worthy of being connected to the team.
Yeah, and you have 10 draft picks, so you got 9 of them on the roster, and you got the 10th that's on the practice squad. That was your last pick in the draft. So at that point, I mean, you obviously feel really good about the players you have, and we'll see if, we're not going to really know about these guys. We'll know about some of them, but we won't know all of them until, 2-3 years down the line, how this draft class actually shakes out. But it's pretty impressive that 10 of them made this roster, because I still think this is a very good roster in this league.
Yeah, I agree. And rounding out the secondary, Zane Anderson is back at the safety spot. Devin Key is not. They do still have an open spot, so there are still moves to come. We're going to talk about that in a second. And last, a shout out to Jack Cochran, who made it back. I felt Mike Rose had a better shot at this roster, but clearly the team did not like what they saw. And I hope Mike Rose landed somewhere of those, because I think he has potential to play in the league.
Yeah, and it kind of surprised me that he is back that he did not get back to the practice squad. But with his early release, it didn't shock me that Cochran was the one that they brought back. Because Rose, they obviously didn't think was worthy of making the roster, and they made that move several days in advance.
Absolutely. Now, we do have one other quarterback that's come to camp. We're going to talk about him, and then what we might see happen here, or maybe what we want to see happening. I know what I'm going to talk about. I think you do too.
Yes, I do. But I want to tell you first, are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is, your reaction time slows way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you too. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's okay. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high and you get a DUI.
Keep it between the lines. All right. So, Oladokun. I'm trying to make sure that I don't butcher his name. I think I already have, so I'm going to stop it there. But Chris is your new quarterback on the practice squad, folks. The only player so far that was not with the Chiefs in training camp. So I think that says something, in that if you're going to go out and acquire players that weren't there, you have to have a real good feel for what they're bringing to your roster. Tim Terry and the pro personnel department, I'm sure, have scoured all the tape in the preseason. And I find it intriguing that after keeping a third on the 53, they went out and got another practice squad quarterback.
Intriguing is the great word for this. I find it surprising. And I wonder if that means that there's not going to be 3 on the 53 for very long. Maybe I'm wrong, but this team doesn't generally carry 3 quarterbacks, and now they have another one on the practice squad. Maybe Buechele is a guy that they release later because you have injuries and you need to bring somebody else up at a different position. I mean, that's possible.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think they've got enough invested in Buechele that if that were to be the case, then they could probably bring him back to the practice squad too, get a little bit more competition on there. I don't know that one cancels out the other. Do you?
I'm not going to say it cancels out, but it's really interesting that they have 4. I don't remember them ever really having 4. I remember them having 3, and it was usually 2 on their active and 1 on the practice squad. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, it certainly will be. Let's see what they do at the last spot. There's a couple of things that stand out to me. They are heavy on the line positions, both the interior specifically. I think there's probably room here for another defensive end. I think they need to go make an acquisition. I haven't run down the entirety as we record this. I haven't seen all of the cuts or the guys who didn't make it back to practice squads yet to see who's available. But I think there's got to be something that you turn over there on the pass rusher side of it. Maybe it's an outside linebacker, stand-up type guy that maybe isn't exactly a fit, but you feel could grow into some kind of role.
Yeah, that's definitely a position that I think that they would have to focus on. I'm still trying to wonder what they're going to do at backup offensive or backup tackle. I mean, obviously they have a lot of guys there. I don't know if they really feel great about them. I mean, do they feel great about Christian with the way he played? Do they feel great about Prince? I can't imagine they felt good about Kennard, but obviously they kept him because they think they see something in the future. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be available to play this year. Yeah.
On Kennard, it's interesting. Brett Veach's quote, I have it in front of me, on the way that Kennard got to the roster. He said he had a good finish. This is quote from Brett Veach. Quote, he had a good finish to his camp. A little bit of a change for him. He played in a run-oriented offense at Kentucky, going to a pass-heavy offense. It took him a little while to get his feet wet. I think that he has a lot of upside, end quote. So they saw enough. I thought it was—
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, it is a concept here that we see a lot in this team. But I felt like he took a small step forward in terms of movement skills and feet specifically in that last preseason game. I didn't think that was enough, but clearly the little things are ringing true for Darren Kennard.
The big thing that I think the team has to look at is, are they seeing enough improvement to think that he can improve vastly between now and when they think he's going to be available to play or ready to play? And you're betting on production, or you're betting on development at this point, because I don't think you saw enough. I agree with you. I don't think you saw enough for him to be on the active roster. But if they're betting on the fact that maybe he can develop into being a starting right tackle eventually, then I guess it makes sense. Though a lot of people would argue that his position was naturally going to be guard in the NFL in general, and they're pretty set at that position, but they can always use interior, more people on the interior. So Allegretti is going to be a free agent next year. So likely I would guess he's probably not back, just because offensive linemen seem to get jobs elsewhere and chances elsewhere. And he's not going to be starting for Kansas City.
Nobody catches the football like Allegretti, though.
Well, that's true.
See how many more touchdowns he makes this year. That might determine his outcome. But other positional groups, you'd like to see them try to bring someone in just to backfill, with possibly the idea of moving up at some point.
Man, I like what they did. I like the fact that they're still looking at tight ends. I think that's a good move for them. I do think that it's, maybe Blanton's able to give them something that they don't really have on the roster. And maybe he's active. Maybe after, 2 weeks practicing, he's active for the third week game. And maybe he's on the active roster. Who knows? I mean, we'll have to see how that turns out, because like you said earlier, and like we've hinted to, there are still more moves to come. I mean, I don't think that this is the final 53 that we go into the first week with. I think there's still at least a move, maybe 2, that could happen. But the other thing, you mentioned it earlier, this team needs more pass rush. And the question is did somebody hold on to a pass rusher knowing that somebody was still going to be looking for one? And I think that there's probably a team or two out there that have a pass rusher that didn't really want to keep them, but felt like they needed to keep them because it's a premium position and they didn't want to just cut them and get nothing.
Agreed. I think that is definitely in the cards, and I think there are several candidates on this roster that are a little bit quizzical to us that could be trade bait at that point. We'll see. it also depends on your trade partners' requirements and what they need as well. So I think there's some open options there for Brett Veach to still strike a deal with someone. But the last thing that stands out to me about where they're at, both on the active roster as well as the addition of this practice squad, is that this is traditionally a practice squad in particular that is full of wide receivers, of speed and skill players. And that is not the case this year. It is just Therese Fountain, who obviously we talked quite a bit about, and Cornell Powell. So I don't think that they're done there either. I think they like to have more speed and pass catchers on there. Everyone knows that my love for Western Kentucky wide receiver Jared Stearns, who is still out there and did not return to Miami as was expected. Don't know what happened there. By all accounts that I had, he should have returned there. That was the plan. Don't know why it didn't. He's one guy that's still out there. There are a number of other guys that I think they have a chance at bringing in as well. I wonder if that churn doesn't continue, particularly on the practice squad in the days to come, in order to like speed it up and get that core volume of speed up.
Yeah, and that could happen. And the other thing is they also brought back Jerry Ely, which we talked about earlier. He played a lot of wide receiver with Kansas City. So there's another skill position. And that's a guy that, you were really high on, at least a back of the roster type guy that could give you something a little bit different. So that'll be something to watch. And I will say this, I do not expect Ely to be called up at any point this year. If he does, I don't think that's a good thing for this team. Mainly because I don't think that the team really wants to pull him up this year. I think that they want to try to give him a year to develop, and maybe he's still here, or maybe he's not here next year. But I think that he's one of those guys that they kind of want to hold on to and see what they can make out of him.
Here's my bold prediction for 12 months from now, folks. 364 days from now, your backfield in Kansas City is Isaiah Pacheco and Jerry and Ely. That's what I'm thinking. This was a gamble by Brett Veach, and it paid off. He got Ely zero exposure during the preseason, got him through waivers and back onto the practice squad. And I can see a big tandem in the future.
Yeah, and this is one of those situations where you look at what they did with Jordy Fortson. This team has shown that it can develop talent on the practice squad and bring it up and make it something. And more importantly than just bringing somebody up from the practice squad, changing their position. And maybe Ely stays at running back, but changing their position and changing what they do on the field, because you have to remember Fortson was a wide receiver. He's now playing tight end. Now, is Ely going to play wide receiver, or is he going to play running back?
Yes.
Yeah, right. But he's going to be a pass catcher that gives them the option of splitting them out wide and doing different things that they don't really have right now. I mean, kind of a McKinnon thing in some aspects, but not. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I think that's going to be really intriguing. And the other thing that we need to say is, what does Kansas City seem to do on a weekly basis? It's always churn the bottom of that practice squad. How much of that's going to happen this year? You got a lot of veterans on this practice squad. I don't think that they're going to be going anywhere anytime soon, because I think the team wants them here. And this type of thing with the 16-man practice squad, and I think up to six eligible veterans on the practice squad, makes you wonder if the NFL is just going to start pushing to go to a larger roster, maybe 60-man roster, something like that in the near future.
Let's get her done. Come on.
Well,
and get rid of the game day rosters. Come on.
Thank you. I was about to say that, because there are some people. I actually had somebody email me and ask me what I thought the first 46-man roster was going to be for game one, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's
not saying I'm not going to think about it, but that's pretty. There's a lot that's going to happen between now and then, and I don't want to try to jump into who's going to be injured or who's not injured, or what Kansas City's going to do between now and then. I mean, they could have one or two or maybe three new players. I don't expect three, but who knows what Reach is going to do this first week.
Yeah. There's a lot to be seen. So we'll keep you apprised if anything major happens trade-wise or elsewise. We will let you know. But that's where they stand today. We will be back with you tomorrow as we start to look forward to what they have to do next. Now that the roster is settling out, it should be finalized here the next couple of days, but there's work to be done. We're going to get into that, looking ahead at week one in the Arizona Cardinals. Be here for that. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell over on YouTube, because we do this 5 days a week for you guys, just like always. And all the audio platforms. If you leave your reviews on Spotify and Apple iTunes, we'd appreciate that. Apple iTunes, Apple Podcasts, that is. It's all right. I hope that we are ready. But we'll be back with you either way tomorrow. Hopefully nothing major breaks. And I'm talking about players, not news. So thanks for your time today. We'll be back with you tomorrow.